welcome back to Imagination Mansion. I thought today I could go through some of the books that I have been reading recently. Um, I've been reading a lot this year actually, because last year I think I read 42 books in total, something like that. And so I was like, and I'd set a reading goal of about 30 books. So I was like, oh, okay, this year I'll set a goal of 40 books, I think I set as a goal. I am far past that now. I think I'm at like 58, and I've got like 3 months. Well, we're in October now, but it's only the first, so three months of 3 months of reading left to do, and I've still got stuff that I want to read. So yeah, these aren't everything that I've read, because a lot of stuff I have put away because I have a lot of new books. So in order to not just keep rereading the same books over and over again and actually start getting through my TBR pile shelves, I have just been putting them away so that I can't access them. So these are only the last couple of months, I want to say, of books. Most of them are non-fiction, I will not lie. Actually, there's a pretty healthy mix this time around, I think. So yeah, I'll just get on with it. So I've put them in order that I read them because that hurts my brain less, and I wanted some kind of rhyme or reason to this video. Anyway, first up, the book that my mother described as very boring when I showed it to her, Ladies of the Grand Tour by Brian Dolan. So this is essentially a book about, so the Grand Tour was basically people in Britain going around Europe to expand their minds, but it was mostly men, whereas there was a movement, I think it was the Georgian Society. So there was a movement of women either sneaking on the parties with men or just going out on their own, and trying to like expand their minds, and some of them actually getting quite liberal and being like, oh my god, women really have no rights in Britain. It was such an eye-opening thing for them. And this ended up with me, it inspired me so much that I ended up getting these two books. So we have the Mary Wollstonecraft, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. So this is a very old book from 1792. It's not quite picking the title up very well because it's red on black. But yeah, this is sort of like the original text from that time, and she's mentioned a lot in this book. And then another one is Blue Stockings by Jane Robinson, because Blue Stockings was the name of the sort of like group of women who were like, no, we want to be smart. So that was that tangent. Next up, we have The Theatre and Its Double by Antonin Artaud. This guy is a very serious guy, and he kind of had like a sociology of what theatre should be, and that it should be more dynamic and human, and like he does use, like, because he talks about the theatre of cruelty, but he doesn't mean just violent, he means other things as well. Not gonna lie, the language that they decided to use when translating this, because I think it was originally French, I say, with tentative confusion, but it is a translation, and they have decided to make it sound very archaic, so some of it did go over my head, but it was still quite interesting. I originally read this for uni because I did creative writing and drama. And so sort of like drama critique was part of that. So that's that one. Next up is See What You're Missing by Will Gompertz. So I love Will Gompertz's writing. I've got his Think Like an Artist book, and he honestly just partly, I like reading him partly because he just introduces you to such a range of artists, because he's just so open-minded about what art should be and what art can do for people, because he's absolutely one of these people that believes that like humans are like creative inherently, like whether you're good at it, humans are inherently creative. Like who hasn't doodled like on their homework or hummed along to a song or anything like that? Like my brain has just fizzled. But yeah, it is just interesting to show what art can do, what you can learn from artists and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good book. Next up, we have a David Attenborough book called The Trials of Life, A Natural History of Animal Behaviour. So that's that one. There were apparently 2 more before this. I have not read them. I think I have one of them. I think I have a very old version of Living Planet, but I haven't read that. But you can obviously just like read this as is, and it's very interesting. And obviously they've got I'll pick a slightly less gross picture. And they've obviously got big pictures, and it's got the wheels on it. And I haven't actually read that many like David Attenborough books, but I do really like it, and it doesn't quite read how his programs watch, if that makes sense. But it was still understandable, it was still enjoyable, it still had a flow and a rhythm, and yeah, I enjoyed it. Next up is a fiction book. So this is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldry, and this is the brilliant sequel to Legends and Lattes. This is technically actually a prequel, so this happens before, but I loved it. I think I was slightly worried going into it because I adored Legends and Latte so much, and I was like, oh, don't. I think it's always that feeling, is it's like, oh, don't ruin it. But honestly, kept the vibes of the first one. There was a couple of moments where it went where I wasn't expecting it to go, but honestly, overall, loved it. So good. Yeah. High fantasy, first loves, secondhand books. Absolutely amazing. Loved it. So next up we have a book that isn't technically out yet, so I have a proof of it that I got given from work, because I work in a bookshop. It's one of the highlights is you do get proofs sometimes. And that is A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. I loved this book, and I mean it's quite pretty proof as well. But I love this book. It comes out in January. It is good. It is so good. It is a fantasy set in sort of a alternative. What year is it set in? Like 1923. So it's set between the world wars. I think they're still technically canon in this. And it's that dark academia, and there's misunderstandings, but it's interesting because you understand the misunderstanding before the characters do, and there's dragons and language, and I really enjoy language as well, so it was so fascinating to like watch them try and decode all these different things. Because yeah, there's like code breaking and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Language of Dragons, put it in your calendar because it sounds so good. Next up, we have another proof, but a non-fiction, and this one is actually out. And that is The Golden Road by William Dalrymple, I think is how you pronounce his name. How Ancient India Transformed the World. It's just a generic Bloomsbury proof. But this was so interesting. Like, I took so many notes. Because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know that much about India or India's like religions or anything like that was like past like year 9 RE. Like, I didn't even do it at GCSE, so it's like the really generic stuff, which is that like Buddhism came out of India, and that was about all I knew. But it is so interesting. And like the actual amount of things that they actually took, like mathematical things and other religious things that I didn't realize. And yeah, like I said, Golden Road is out now, so like that's the actual cover it'll have. But yeah, so good, so fascinating. So next up we have a couple of Angela Carter's. So first up we have one of her novels, which is The Magic Toy Shop. I love the way she writes. I love it's like dark, lyrical, kind of reminds me, it's somewhere between like Shakespearean and Brothers Grimm, is a way that I feel like I can describe it. Like, it's poetic, slightly down to earth, kind of archaic, but set in pseudo modern times. Like, they're usually based like between like the 50s and 70s. But for the longest time when I was reading this, I thought it was based in like Victorian times or something, just because of the language. But it's not, like, it's not that big of a book, so it's not bogged down in language. Like, it's not waffle or anything like that. It's just beautiful. It's one of those things where it was very, very dark, very gothic. I personally, I think just because I read a lot of horror, feel like it could have gone a bit darker, but I think that's just a personal preference, and I think that the ending that it actually had highlights the kind of people that the villains are in this book. And yeah, it was just, I loved the characters, I loved the twists as well. I was not, even though it's hinted, I still wasn't expecting it. I was like, oh no, they're not going to go there. They went there. But yes, that's that one. And then next up, I have a collection of short stories from her, which is Black Venus. Very interesting. Like, once again, that beautiful language and utterly bizarre stories. Like, some of them are a bit of the time, I'd say. Like, there's some of the bits where I got, but at the same time, you do have to take it in the context of the time it was written, which, like I said, 60s, 70s, 50s, that kind of time. But beautiful storytelling, beautiful, almost lyrical writing sometimes. And yeah, there were some that I loved more than others, but overall, brilliant. Oh, next up, we have a behemoth, which is The Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel. Can't actually read the without men bit in this lighting. I don't have very strong lights in here just because I have very sensitive eyeballs. So great for my eyes, not great for YouTube. But yeah, this was so good. And as someone who has read the original story of art, it is a much more modern language based version. Like, obviously, it doesn't waffle on the way that, is it called Gomperch? I think the original. But it still talks about like their inspirations, sort of like the pioneers, who inspired who, the kind of eras they come from, and also include beautiful examples of artwork. Because that's the thing, like, it's not all art that I would enjoy personally. Like, I'm not a big fan of like the sort of like quote unquote modernist art. Like, I think because it just kind of like goes over my head, like stuff like that. Like, I'm like, eh. But the fact that, you know, it actually puts into context of, one, what they were trying to do, two, what they were subverting, three, what they were like going against, and especially as, you know, in the Without Men version, how they were competing with men, often losing. Like, so many of these people, the only reason I'd heard of them is because I listened to her podcast. I haven't listened to that many episodes at the moment. I'm not gonna lie, it was the Frida Kahlo episode that sucked me in and actually had me start listening. But she's got a brilliant one on Lee Miller as well. I think that's the one that's got a film out at the moment with Kate Winslet. I'm not good with famous people's names, but yeah, it's so good, and I highly recommend. It is out in paperback now though, so you don't have to get one this large. This is very heavy. And next up is Anne Boleyn and Elizabeth I, The Mother and Daughter Who Changed History by Tracy Borman. This, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it sounded interesting, but I was like, I wonder what kind of things will come up in it. But honestly, I was just like so fascinated because it showed aspects of both women that does not get touched upon in like popular discourse, because a lot of people focus on, for Anne Boleyn, the scandal and all that kind of stuff. I think at this point it's shown that all the things that she was accused of were not true at this point. But a lot of people focus on that and her relationship with Henry and her sister and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't really, whereas this one, it's more, yeah, she was a good mother. You know, she actually cared about her child, for the unfortunate short period of time that they were together. And with Elizabeth I, a lot of the times they only focus on the empire and her, you know, like prowess as a leader and all this kind of stuff. Whereas this is going on about how, like, actually she was quite an anxious person and sort of the reasons why she became the Virgin Queen kind of thing. And it's so interesting to me. And like I said, it's got images, as you'd imagine. And honestly, it's such a well thought out story, like book, and it chronicles both women very well and the people sort of like in their periphery. And yeah, highly recommend that one. And then last up is one that's a little bit different, which is Boot, Small Robot Big Adventure by Shane Hegarty. So I'm not gonna lie, when I went down to Manchester recently, I have a little mini vlog that I did on my site. I basically, on that evening, like went to a restaurant, and because I was basically just like sat alone, I basically finished my food and then just like sat sipping my drink at the table by myself reading this. And yeah, it's basically about a little robot who's looking for his girl, like, because he's like a toy robot, and so he's like, oh no, I need to be with, you know, Beth, who's his like owner, and it's got great art, and it's just so cute, and it's got a few twists and turns, and he meets some characters along the way, and the way that they kind of deal with the sort of some are robots that can feel, some are robots that can't, is very interesting, and how that comes about. And yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it was great. It's a 5 to 8, so it is a very easy read. Like I said, I finished it in about an hour. And it's illustrated by Ben Mantle, and he did a good job. It's very, very cute. So, sort of like last up is what I'm reading at the moment, which is sort of on theme to this, sort of not, which is Artificial Intelligence, A Guide for Thinking Humans by Melanie Mitchell. It's this one. It's a Pelican book, and I am that much through it, so where does it finish? Because they always have notes. So it's 370 pages, and I'm 289 in. So I've got about 100 pages or so left. And it is so interesting. Because of how fast technology is moving at the moment, and this was written in 2019, there are things that I feel like will be slightly out of date. But overall, because she actually goes into like how these things are coded, but without like reams of mathematics, like how these things are coded, what they're trying to do with them, the different types of AI and how they're built from the ground up or the sky down. I don't know where I'm going with that, but also like if you're interested in like, yeah, artificial intelligence, computers, all that kind of stuff, recommend a read. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been reading at the moment. And I've also kind of been in a, I mean, you've probably seen from my channel, in a bit of like a YouTube renaissance at the moment. I've been having fun with it again. I haven't been feeling as stressed. I think almost moving my room around, weirdly enough, has made me more comfortable, partially because it's given me a backdrop. Shown by my GCSE art project of Road Camelot from D. Greyman and my pumpkins. But and my Blavengard. I just have a collection of friends back here because I didn't know where else to put them, so they live there now. But yeah, I've sort of organised my books, organised my desks, sort of sorted my life out. And as I've said in previous videos, like autumn is my time. My brain is mush in summer. But yeah, I do. And also, I really like this bookmark that I have in this book, because it also includes Pluto. As a 90s baby, justice for Pluto, thank you. But you know, I'll accede that he is currently king of the dwarves, or king of the Kuiper Belt. I'll take that. I'll take it. But yeah, that is this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe, because like I said, I'm getting a lot more comfortable with this now. So I do actually want to put stuff out. I am letting myself be eclectic, because I think trying to show myself in a box is what I was struggling with before. So there'll probably be some on different topics. I mean, as you've seen, I read a lot of different topics, and so I am happy to go into deeper dives on some of the things I've read and give like deeper dives into topics. Obviously, this is just what I'm gleaning from books and, you know, these kind of things. So obviously, I'm not an expert. I'm not even close to being an amateur. I'm literally just, this is what I'm word vomiting from books that I have read. But yeah, if you enjoy, like I said, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.